Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome to the world of insights and actions. Today in this webinar, we're going to discuss how we can improve sales effectiveness and optimize revenue growth of leading consumer goods companies using perfect store execution and generative AI. Before we get started, I'd like to go through and introduce everyone that will be participating today on the panel, so the thought leadership of each involved. So my name is Kevin McCurdy. I'm the Global Consumer Goods Partner Leader at AWS, leading strategy as we go to market with our consumer goods customers. Anish, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Kevin. Hi, Anish here. I've been working at Sigmoid for about 10 years, started back as data engineer, led a few programs delivering data analytics and data engineering solutions together. Currently, I work as a solutions architect for a few of our strategic customers.
Thanks, Anish. Wilson, would you like to go next, please?
Thank you, Kevin. My name is Wilson Thangachan. I am the Global Partner Solutions Architect for Consumer Goods at AWS. I work closely with Kevin in enabling our partners on their AWS Partner Network journey. I'm glad to be part of this webinar. And back to you, Kevin.
Thanks, Wilson. Jackson.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Hi, everyone. My name is Jackson Dowden, and I'm a Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. I specialize in data analytics and QuickSight primarily, and how we can use AWS tools to drive impact across industries. Back to you, Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you, Jackson. And to everyone, we will be going through, you'll be hearing from a lot of thought leadership from each one of us as we go through today. Want to also make sure as we do go through, please note to provide any kind of questions. You have the capability in the Q&A as we go through, and want to make sure that we keep it interactive, but also answer your questions as we're going through the presentation. As we go through, we're at the brink within the consumer goods industry of a lot of disruptions. And actually, even real time today, a big area obviously within the United States is the closures of the ports with the strike that's going on. So even more now, supply chain disruptions. But let's talk about three of the major trends in the global industry for consumer goods that are impacting consumers. Market share impacts, consumer preference changes, as well as the impact of inflationary price sensitivity and competitive changes. With regards to market share, consumer goods, and especially brands, losing consumer demand, and there's a lot of competition amongst private labels. That's partly due to some of the price and inflationary pressures that are going on today. But we also see the impact of rising commodity prices. So the impact of rising commodity prices is forcing price increases on products, also impacting consumer goods brands not being able to drive price decreases or the promotions that they're typically used to doing. And the second area is changing consumer preferences. So we've got the rising shift to omni shopping, and so the ability to buy products now, not only in store, where most have shopped before, but online via their mobile device. And so there's a big shift there in terms of key products within the category. So often looking for the proven products or the most well-known within the category or the subsegment, and that makes it more challenging for marketing as well as the brands in some cases to break through. So often here we're seeing consumer brands the shift is R&D coming in with new products, new promotions, looking for promotional pack type solutions to break through. So buy one, get one free, or complimentary items as a part of those packages. In the last area, and this is the one that's been we probably hear about globally in each of the markets, we're obviously starting to see some of the inflationary pressures come down, but there still is sensitivity around price, and there's the impact of promotions. And so within this kind of tug of war, if you will, is looking at those pricing strategies. What are the right ones to run in what channel? So there may be certain influences we want to drive on a .com or e-com site versus brick and mortar. But how do we do those and impact and make sure that we drive the right demand in those channels, but we also need to have the right product available for when we're running those pricing decisions or we're running those promotional decisions. So owing to these challenges, in today's discussion today between AWS and Sigmoid, we're going to cover the solution that Sigmoid and AWS have come to provide. That is perfect store execution. And that is you're going to see as we go through not only the management of this data, but also driving the insights and making the right recommendations around retail execution, shelf optimization decisions, and promotional execution decisions. So we're going to solve these things, and this is going to tie in for sales, revenue growth management, as well as the pricing teams that are here and hopefully participating as a part of this discussion. So when we talk about this execution, we have AWS and Sigmoid have collaborated to solve this problem for a leading consumer Fortune 500. So the example I'm going to go through here is around a Fortune 500 customer that has seen some dramatic benefits to the perfect execution solution that we're driving today. So in the first case, and I'll touch on, is driving faster insights. So this Fortune 500 company is bringing together over 90 sources of data, so 90 different retailers to collect, cleanse, and harmonize that data. And some of that may also tie in of other data sources that tie in around demographic, syndicate type segmentation that we want to include within the insights. So we're collecting, cleansing, and harmonizing that data to provide insights around retail execution, on-shelf availability, as well as promotional effectiveness. So in this case, around the 90% faster time to insights, one of the users used to spend roughly 2 to 3 hours of pulling together data, macros in Excel, trying to slice and dice the information to find out what should they focus on as they go in store to drive the execution. Now they've got, within less than an hour, action to the insights that they want to see. So focusing there on out of stocks, focusing on-shelf availability as well as pricing. The second area, and this really ties then is to the ROI, is driving 4% improvement in sales. So the productivity is one side of the game. The other big one is where we're actually driving sales. So in this case, 6 months of usage with the system, they were able to drive a $2.5 million US dollar improvement in sales for the given retailer. So we've seen top line growth as a big part of that. The other piece to this is on that the other part of the automation is not only on my sales user insight productivity, but also the automation. So the data cleansing, the harmonization, they saw a 40% improvement in sales productivity due to that automation. And then lastly, to the company itself is the overall cost savings. So a $5 million annual cost savings. And the cost savings comes in here from legacy systems that they had on-prem, multiple systems doing similar tasks that they then had to bring that data together into a single area. So being able to now to have a single solution that Sigmoid has built on AWS, modern stack on AWS, that is now has a single source of truth, automating that process, they've seen those cost savings. So not only cost savings productivity, but then that improvements in sales that we talked about of 4% is the main driver for them. So this all sounds interesting, I'm sure, but what I would like to have is Anish actually talk through a little bit more of the tangible technical details of this and how we're actually enabling for our customers. Anish.
Thanks, Kevin, for taking us through the value that Sigmoid has been able to generate with AWS, and also for putting a really detailed picture about the current challenges that are faced in the consumer goods industry. So as you mentioned, the solution that we have implemented in AWS is Perfect Store, and there are 3 components to that solution. One is the insights. So using data-driven patterns to uncover the patterns at a store and at a UPC level across the country, which can drill down at the store and UPC level from a Amazon QuickSight dashboard. The second part is compliance. So ensuring that each store adheres to the agreed upon standards around product placement, promotional execution, while also maintaining the external regulatory requirement, and also aligning with your internal and external KPIs. And finally, recommendations of translating those insights and compliance data into actionable recommendations on your product assortment or your shelf design. In today's webinar, we're going to focus more on the insights portion, which is the first and the foundational element. This is where everything starts. By tapping into the right data and transforming it into the actionable insights, you can get a clear picture of what's working and what's not working at a store level. In the following webinars, by the way, we'll touch on compliance and recommendations, but today, as I discussed, it will be on the insight section. So as you can already imagine, insights at a store level is key to unlocking your competitive advantage in the current market. We'll talk about how you can capture all of this data together, harmonize it, and then generate visualizations on top of it, which can help your sales team, your executive leadership, a lot more decision-making power, which is driven by the data. We will try to provide a 360-degree view of key elements like assortment, merchandising, sales, shelf placement, and pricing. As Kevin mentioned earlier, we have aggregated for this particular customer the data from around 90 major retailers, including Walmart, Kroger, and Target. By harmonizing all of these data sources, we have been able to solve this picture for multiple different categories. Some of these are highlighted here, starting with competitor pricing and market share. How are you performing across a particular category between your corporate performance versus your competitor performance? How do promotions play a role between the pricing that you have and the pricing that customer has? What impact do each of these have on each other? What is your current on-shelf availability? Is there any phantom inventory in store that is showing up in your data, but there is no actual inventory, and that is because of which you're losing sales? In addition, you can do obviously at a store level how stores are performing. If in a particular zip code one retailer is performing better than another retailer, so giving that competitive advantage is also very relevant. With this, I would like to hand it over to Wilson to take you through a well-architected AWS solution, and then we'll come back to see how some of these features are resolved in that architecture. Wilson.
Thank you, Anish. Even though Kevin and Anish talked about it, let's relook at the key questions, right? So number one, I as a customer have tons of data. So how do I bring the solution to the data? And number two, data is in different sources, but cannot be used in its raw form, right? And number three, what insights are hidden in the data when discovered can lead to actions. And on top of all this, this needs to be done in a secure manner, in a cost-effective manner, and with low latency, right? So for a solution of this scale, let's review the solution architecture, keeping in mind these questions, and look at a high level, how does it look on AWS for perfect store execution? A quick call out though, not all services that are in this architecture would be part of your final solution. And you might also choose to bring in other services based on your specific need. But let's dive deeper into some of the important aspects of the proposed architecture. So let's start with data that is coming from various sources in different formats that needs to be ingested, curated, transformed, stored, and then analyzed to derive actionable insights. Now, how can data be securely accessed? The data that is available on premises from various systems like, say, ERP, point of sale, product, marketing, CRM, and order management systems can be accessed using dedicated and secure network connectivity like AWS Direct Connect or site-to-site VPN. This not only makes the access on a secure network, but it also supports, say, provision bandwidth. Then this data needs to be enhanced with data that is coming from external data sources, like third-party DSPs, media agencies, or publicly available demographic data, Nielsen and RI data, and offline point of sale. And the data cannot be used in its raw form, so it needs to be cleansed, harmonized, and prepared. For real-time data ingestion, Amazon Kinesis family of services or Amazon Managed Streaming for Kafka can be used. For batch and file-based data transfer, the AWS Transfer family of services can be used. The AWS Glue service is pretty popular with our customers because not only does it make it easy to discover, prepare, move, and integrate data in a low-code, no-code fashion, you can stand up seamless data integration pipeline in matter of days rather than months using AWS Glue. Now let's look at data storage. Like you can use purpose-built databases to store structured data like transactional records or entity metadata, or use Amazon S3 for durable object storage. Raw data needs to be stored for audit and compliance purposes, and curated and transformed data is stored for analytics and business intelligence. Archiving can be done using S3 Glacier class, Glacier storage class to not only optimize on cost, but also on retrieval SLA. Now, when it comes to generative AI, machine learning and analytics is where the widest variety of services are available. Industry-leading foundation models, say like Cohere, Meta, Anthropic, Amazon Titan, can be accessed using Amazon Bedrock through a single API, along with a broad set of capabilities to build generative AI applications with security, privacy, and responsible AI. But if you choose to build, train, and deploy your own machine learning models, you can use Amazon SageMaker. Or alternatively, if you'd like to use fully managed services like Amazon Q for Business or Amazon Forecast for fully managed time series forecasting, or Amazon Redshift for fully managed cloud data warehouse that makes it simple and cost-effective to analyze all your data. Now, to process petabyte scale data, Amazon EMR is the industry-leading cloud big data solution. By the way, you can also use open source frameworks such as Apache Spark, Apache Hive, or Presto with Amazon EMR. And shortly, Jackson will show you a demo of using Amazon Q with QuickSight. You can use Amazon Q with QuickSight to build modern interactive dashboards, so paginated reports, use natural language queries, and the insights that are generated can be embedded in your own custom-built applications. So we all know with traditional BI, the challenges are not just how expensive they are to procure, but it is also time-consuming to configure. And not all your users can use traditional BI without specialized training. Now, finally, the solution also supports using custom-built applications or third-party solutions like SaaSVIA for advanced analytics. So the analytics that is generated can be then plugged into your custom solutions and third-party applications. If these end-user applications are running on premises, again, the data can be accessed over provision direct connect or client-to-client VPN. Or if they're running on AWS Cloud, cross-account access can be enabled so that the data does not have to traverse through public internet, but can travel through dedicated AWS network. The data is always encrypted both at rest and in transit. Now, I talked about bringing the solution to the data and not the data to the solution. Perfect store execution is deployed by Sigmoid on the customer's provisioned AWS account. So the data does not have to leave the customer's account. And Anish will also talk about the principle of least privilege access in the next slide, while he'll also look at some of the well-architected principles that the solution architecture supports. Meanwhile, if you want to build custom containerized applications that are deployed as microservices, you can use Amazon EKS or Fargate. And for security monitoring and cost control, you can use AWS Identity and Management Service, along with Amazon CloudWatch, CloudTrail, and AWS Budget. And for compute on demand, use EC2 or use AWS Lambda for running code without provisioning and managing infrastructure. Now to go into the pillars of well-architected principle that are considered and built into this architecture, back to you, Anish.
Thanks, Wilson, for very detailed walkthrough of the architecture that we built. So the way I look at it is four lenses for why it is a well-architected solution. You mentioned governance or the principle of least privilege. So how do people only have access to the data that they should have, or how we are if you are transferring data, is that encrypted? Making sure the data is the right quality, is being audited if there are any audit requirements following those practices. How do you make sure that data is timeliness in the way that if you're receiving data hourly, do the reports get updated hourly? Is it daily? Taking care of reinstatements, because retailers like Walmart do reinstate data every week. How do you take care of reinstatements? Building a platform which is flexible and scalable. Right now, let's say you are working with 8 retailers or 10 retailer data. Can it support 90 retailer? I think those are the key components of a well-architected solution that we have highlighted before. Now, I know a really exciting piece is coming up, which is Amazon Q, and how we have been able to leverage generative AI to execute the perfect store solution. Jackson, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Anish. So just before we move to a demo to see the solution in action, I want to briefly talk about Amazon Q, and specifically Amazon Q in QuickSight. So some of you may already be aware of Amazon Q, which was launched by AWS last year as a generative AI-powered assistant designed for work that could be tailored to your business. And Amazon Q brings its advanced generative AI technology to Amazon QuickSight through a set of what we call generative BI capabilities, all aimed at accelerating the time to insights. Some of these Gen BI capabilities include allowing business analysts to build BI dashboards in minutes using natural language to create and refine visualizations and complex calculations. Users can also get AI-driven executive summaries of dashboards and create detailed and customizable data stories highlighting key insights, trends, and drivers. But the feature I want to focus on today is the multi-visual Q&A experience that allows users to ask questions of their data in plain English. There will always be questions that the dashboard can't fully answer. And in the past, if an analyst or user couldn't find the data or visual they needed, there would have to be a lengthy back and forth between the analysts and the BI development team to update the dashboards, taking days, if not weeks, for the request to be completed, all depending on the availability and bandwidth of the development team. Well, now with Amazon Q and QuickSight, users can ask their questions to Q and get a multi-visual response immediately, accelerating the time to insights and enabling rapid, data-driven decision-making. So let's move to the demo where we can use these features in the context of our use case, using QuickSight and the generative BI features to surface insights about key performance indicators of store execution. So now we've moved to the Amazon QuickSight dashboard that has been built to analyze store execution data. And this dashboard has been built on top of the solution that we just looked at. So we're able to visualize this data as a result of the ingestion, harmonization, transformation, and everything else up to this point that prepared the data for consumption. And this dashboard has been prepared for end users and analysts to explore and analyze the data, which for this dashboard specifically is around 4 key performance indicators of store execution: sales value and quantity, on-shelf availability, and lost sales. So as discussed earlier, on-shelf availability is a key metric that represents inaccuracy of inventory reporting, and the resulting loss of revenue is captured in the lost sales metric. And looking at the dashboard itself, these 4 metrics are displayed in month-over-month KPI visuals across the top. So from a quick glance, we can see that in the previous month, while our overall sales quantity dipped by a fraction of a percent, our total sales value rose, while our on-shelf availability improved, resulting in a decrease in lost sales. But while these are high-level metrics, the dashboard includes 2 sections below for analysis based on location and then by product. So Kevin, can you go to the next part of the demo, please? Awesome. So in the first section, just below our KPIs, we have our location insights. And we have a map graph on the left showing the on-shelf availability by state, allowing us to see which states are struggling the most with phantom inventory. The table on the right also contains this information in tabular format with associated lost sales. The map in between those, however, is on a different level of granularity, showing where each of our states are located across the country, and hovering over each dot provides our metrics at a store level. But while this is interesting, there's also a lot of data here, and the store map in particular is hard to read with the amount of stores in our dataset. So the dashboard has been built with controls at the top, allow us to take specific subsets of our data. And as we can see from the controls, we have options to splice by date and across 5 levels of location granularity, all the way from a regional level down to an individual store level. So let's say we're only interested in the last 6 months of data. We can move our start date to February 1st of this year, and we'll shortly see the visuals reload as the filter is applied. Then, from looking at our map visual, let's take a look at the state with the lowest on-shelf availability, which looks to be Arizona. So we can go to the state dropdown and select AZ. And now when we resize our store map, we can get a better understanding of how our stores are spread out across that state. And for demonstration purposes, let's look closer at a smaller region, specifically at the stores in the Tucson area, selecting it from the territory dropdown control. Now from this view, we can start to look closer at store comparisons. And notice how with each filter we applied, the other visuals on screen were also filtered. So our KPIs across the top now reflect the subset of data we've chosen to analyze. So we can see how our metrics have trended downwards this month for this territory. These filters are also applied as we scroll further down to the section on product analysis. Here we can see which product categories are contributing to our sales, as well as individual products. And in the product bar chart in the middle, we can even drill down to product subtypes, letting us see not only how something like waffles has contributed to our sales, but even which type, like the 10 count of protein waffles versus the extra large box. The table to the right shows the other metrics, so we can view the on-shelf availability and lost sales of individual products as well, all specific to the stores, regions, and dates that we've chosen to look at. And this has already been useful. We've been able to analyze some metrics, and maybe we could already go back having identified particular stores or products that are facing issues with phantom inventory, so we know where we need to take action. But we don't have to stop there. This is for demo purposes, but what if we had a much larger dashboard with sheets addressing some of the other metrics we discussed earlier this session, like budgets, prices, and promotion effectiveness? What if we didn't want to have to select each of these filters every time we want to surface an insight, or dig through multiple sheets or reports to find what we needed? What if we wanted to conduct an analysis that isn't possible with this current selection of pre-built visuals? For example, what if we wanted to view the on-shelf availability for a particular store or set of stores over time? It's true that we could start selecting date ranges and seeing how the values change at our KPIs at the top, but what if we wanted it all in one visual? We wouldn't want to have to cut a ticket to the backend team and wait days or longer for an updated dashboard with the visual we needed. And this is where Amazon Q and QuickSight and Generative BI can help us. So we can now open the Ask Q bar at the top of our dashboard to open up the Q&A window and start asking questions. So let's use the last example of on-shelf availability over time, and let's ask for the same region we've been looking at. So in plain English, I'm simply going to ask for the OSA API, or on-shelf availability, by month in Tucson. And Q is going to come back shortly with a multi-visual response. And before we look at the response itself, we can see how Q interpreted and understood our question by clicking the pencil icon. Here we can see how it's using the sum of the on-shelf availability metric for the Tucson territory by date with a monthly granularity as we requested. And notice how the value in our dataset is actually WM Tucson AZ. So even though our query was in the exact same form as our data, we just asked for Tucson, Q was still able to understand what we were looking for. Now coming to the visuals themselves, in the center, we have a line graph showing exactly what we asked for, the on-shelf availability metric over time. But then the other KPI and bar chart to the right contain data that Q thinks is relevant to our query to provide more context. So even though we didn't explicitly ask for it, we can also see information about the on-shelf availability metric for individual stores in that territory. Just below the visuals, we also have tabular details, and to the left, we have a textual narrative that explains some of the key insights from the visuals generated. Now let's continue exploring our data and ask a broader question, this time looking at the lost sales metric. So we can simply ask which store had the highest lost sales, not filtering for any particular location. And of the almost 2,000 stores in our dataset, we can see them ranked by lost sales and can identify which ones we may want to investigate further. So let's take the first store, store 0377952. Let's ask for more details. So we can come back to the query bar and we can ask, how do the product categories contribute to lost sales for this particular store number? And in this case, when Q gives us our response, we'll be able to see that all of the lost sales are coming from one product category, our frozen breakfast products. But if we want to continue looking closer, we only have to edit our query to ask which products, instead of product categories, contribute to the lost sales for this store. And as we can see from the response generated by Q, in this particular store, it's going to be waffles that are the source of this loss in revenue. So having seen the QuickSight dashboard and Amazon Q in action, I want to take a step back and review what we've just done. Remember that QuickSight isn't the first step, it's the last. And this analysis has all been enabled by the data acquisition and processing of the larger solution. But then within QuickSight, dashboards with built-in interactivity through filter controls and drill down actions have enabled end users to analyze and explore their data. But then even beyond the pre-built dashboards, Amazon Q further accelerates the time to insights by empowering users to ask their own questions, generate new visuals, and continue to dig into their data all in plain English. And just like the data that populates the dashboards, the answers provided by Q follow any row or column level security in place to maintain our security and governance standards. And this whole thing can be embedded, allowing your end users to access both the dashboards and the Q&A experience from your application without having to switch or log in to another tool. But most importantly, we aren't just looking at our data. The result of this entire process is to surface insights that inform our decision-making, like identifying for which locations, stores, and products our business needs to focus on for improving on-shelf availability and addressing phantom inventory. And ultimately, it's through taking action on these insights that we see the outcomes discussed by my colleagues earlier this session, like improvements in sales, annual cost savings, and increased sales productivity. But with that, I'll hand it back to you, Anish, to look closer at what really differentiates the solution.
Thanks, Jackson. Really excited to see how Amazon is, again, at the cutting edge of development on generative AI as well. So how we have distinguished the current solution from the traditional way of working in emails or reporting. Since this is a well-architected solution, you would see a lot of data quality and monitoring controls have been built into the system. So you are seeing regular reports or daily reports of which data sets were succeeded, which failed, why they failed. We can take care of reinstatements and remediation. As mentioned, as you all know, Walmart and Targets of the world do reinstate their data very frequently, and the solution has been built to take care of that end to end. We do harmonization across retailers so that you have a single source of truth across the geography, and you're not looking at one table or one ontology for one retailer versus the other retailer. The validation and enrichment has been built into the system. We do harmonize the UPCs with your internal SAP or internal ERP systems as well, so that you're getting the category hierarchy or UPC hierarchy from your internal system rather than just from the retailers. And obviously, last but not the least, the visualization are also part of the solution, which we start with some basic set of visualization, and then using Amazon Q, you can further extend those dashboards. Yeah, back to you, Kevin.
Excellent. That was great. Anish, Jackson, Wilson, thank you so much for the overview and the live demonstration. It's great to hear about the well-architected process that's been built, and then actually see the reference architecture that is behind the solution, and then Jackson brings it to life with the demo and Amazon Q. Unbelievable. So wanted to, we had a few questions that came in, so I kind of wanted to pose these out, and based on some of the examples. So tying in probably both to you, Wilson, and Anish, one of the questions is around what are the different ways consumer goods companies receive data from retailers as well as possibly third-party providers, and how do you address this?
Right. Like, so we do see a variety of data sources. Some of them are file-based transfer protocols, like so SFTP. Some providers have, so for Walmart Luminate, there's API. We have worked with emails as well. Unfortunately, there are some still retailers who are working with emails, and they send sales reports every month. So we have automated those out as well. But yeah, so there are definitely a variety of sources, and then volume as well depends on the customer as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very well, very good. And then I think tying into that, this other question I was looking at actually ties in. So once you get the data, there's often different, a variety of data quality issues that come when you bring this data together. So I know you talked about handling for restatements and also measuring data quality. Can you help me from this user with the key steps I should adapt for measuring data quality?
Yeah, I think data quality can be a webinar in of itself. Like the number of steps that we take to ensure data quality is huge. Sigmoid has an accelerator around data quality as well. So if you have your standard marketing data sources or your standard sales data sources, we have a accelerator and a framework that can just plug into your system and implement the data. Since we have seen these data sources before, we know what data quality checks should be applied. So we have automated those sections out, and maybe a quick demo of that as a follow-up would be really cool. But yeah, so there are multiple steps. Again, reinstatements is just one typical aspect. Sometimes the UPCs don't match. Like there is an external UPC ID that you cannot find your internal environment. So there are different scenarios that we have to work across, and we have solved this problem multiple times, I guess. Yeah.
Excellent. And that's critical, obviously, to everything then as we drive on the insights. Hey, Wilson, to yours on the reference architecture side, I think this ties to you. Is there a technology in the architecture shown which can help us accelerate data migration from SAP, ECC, BW, or S4HANA?
Yes. Most of our AWS customers are running their ERP solution on SAP. So there are prescriptive guidances on accessing data that is in SAP, either on-premises. Some of the services that are called out in the architecture do play an important role, like AWS Direct Connect, for example, in accessing data that can be on premises running on SAP. Along with that, interestingly, there are many customers who are also considering SAP migration and modernization on SAP RISE on AWS. You would be able to find publicly available technical guidances that have been put together, say, for example, using migration services or backup and restore for moving from on-prem to cloud. Regardless of if migration is part of the scope or not, accessing data from SAP, there are, like I said, publicly available guidances, but if you need to go into specifics, you can get in touch with us, and I can ensure that you have a discussion with our subject matter experts on your specific asks.
Excellent. Thank you. That's helpful. And given whether it be SAP or another ERP system, I know the architecture can handle for that, but I know in the consumer goods industry, we see a heavy usage of SAP. One of the areas ties in, and maybe Jackson, this is to you, is how can Amazon Bedrock be leveraged for generative models, and how is it different from Amazon Q? Just from help the user out here.
Sorry, Did you say this was for me or for Wilson? Sorry, I couldn't catch the start.
It could be for either one of you of how could Amazon Bedrock be leveraged for generative models, and then also how is it different from Q? Because I know sometimes that's what the question came through as.
Right, and
Well,
I can go for it first.
okay.
And Jackson, you can add any details that I miss. If you look at the three layers of generative AI, there's one, the large language models with access to data. At the bottom layer, at the middle layer comes the layer of tooling. And on top are your applications that are using generative AI. Bedrock comes in between. And Bedrock allows you to access large language models that are made available by others, like say Anthropic, for example. Now, if you as a customer want to build your own models, then machine learning models, then you're going to use SageMaker. However, compare those with Amazon Q, either Q for Business or Q for QuickSight. Those are fully managed services. So if you want to use generative AI without spending time on provisioning infrastructure or compute, then you're going to use fully managed services like Amazon Q for Business or say Q for QuickSight to build and while you focus on your specific use case to resolve rather than worrying about other aspects like infrastructure provisioning and compute capacity and so on. So that is where you would use the managed services rather than building your own solutions for generative AI.
Excellent. Very good. One of the questions came through, I think, from the user side of who are the typical consumers or users of the insights that you often see.
I guess I'll take that one.
Okay.
So there are different hierarchy of users that we have worked with. There are executive dashboards, executive summary where users are just executives looking at a high level how their business is doing month over month, year over year. We have to the ground level of territory managers using to compare their budgets to the sales targets and where they currently stand in the entire SNOP timeframes, right? So there are different sorts of user, and we have these tools to develop different granularity of BI tools. Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, and I think what I saw in the demo, which I think was great, is if you've got a power analyst or power user that really wants to get into the data, they've got that capability and flexibility. But if I'm also not a data analyst, I can easily use Q to surface up my based on basic questions, surface up my insights and give me some of the direction of what I need to do. That's awesome. That was the last. I don't see any other questions coming through right now. Just check again.
I see one out there for Anish and I. It
Okay.
says, how do you factor in dependencies across multiple stakeholders involved with delivering such a massive solution? It is correct. There are multiple stakeholders here, and Anish can add more details from an implementation standpoint. The first stakeholder would be the customer. The second would be the partner Sigmoid here, who's bringing in the solution. The third would be AWS itself, the cloud provider where the solution runs. The fourth would be third-party providers of data that is used to enhance the solution. Now, between AWS customers, AWS, and AWS partners, there is a very strong working relationship to ensure, number one, the customer is the most important person in this project, right? The customer's requirement for maybe SaaS VIA. They are AWS partners too. So the collaboration between Sigmoid, AWS, and somebody else who's already an AWS partner who brings in a solution that adds value is also enabled through the AWS partner network. So we ensure that those partners are also brought in as needed and to strengthen the solution for our end customers. And Anish, if you want to add something to that, feel free to go ahead and.
Yeah, I mean, you captured it really well, Wilson. It definitely takes a village. Like we have to have communication with the central IT team because they might have their own standard setup. Uh, we definitely have some frameworks to accelerate these implementations, but we definitely work with the central IT teams of the customers. We obviously have ears with you, with Wilson and Jackson, to understand the new features that are coming out of AWS and how to implement them, and then bringing those best practices that we have learned so far. I think bringing it all together definitely requires a lot of significant effort, but that's what we are here for.
Excellent. Thank you. And I don't see any other questions. Wilson, do you?
No, I think I'm not seeing anything either.
Very good. Thank you all for showcasing today, Anish, Jackson, Wilson. Want to thank everyone else for making the time this morning, this afternoon, this evening to be here for the webinar. Just providing you some final details here. If you've got any further questions, please send an email to marketing@sigmoidanalytics.com. We can get back to you if there's any kind of follow-ups. Anything all for thank you all for showcasing today, Anish, Jackson, Wilson. Want to thank everyone else for making the time this morning, this afternoon, this evening to be here for the webinar. Just providing you some final details here. If you've got any further questions, please send an email to marketing@sigmoidanalytics.com. We can get back to you if there's any kind of follow-ups, anything about implementations, demonstrations, those sorts of things. We would love to have a deeper dive. So again, thank you all. Thank you, team. This has been great.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.